you said that changed you. How could it not? Um, can you talk about that sort of journey that you then made in terms of how you took that change and how you grew that into sort of your vision that of the world that you have? And the thing, of the many things I love about Susan, I think probably the thing that I love the most is her ability to operate at a lot of different levels and go back and forth between them very rapidly. So operating at the level of an intellectual and a scholar, at the level of a master teacher, at the level of an artist, and at the level of a spiritual being, if you will, um, who has a big picture vision, and yet is also God is in the details type person. And so, I knew you as a magnificent singer, a coloratura, soprano, an actor, and my friend for so many years. But I know that even though you and I didn't, we talked about it some, but not a lot. I know that 9/11 changed you and took you on this journey into academia again and all of that. But then you now have like a much bigger vision of the artist, I think, and of what the importance of story. So one thing that you said to me when we were doing prep conversations for tonight was you said that you teach Gilgamesh as to your playwrights, I think your playwriting class, right? And this has been on my shelf forever, this Stephen Mitchell version of Gilgamesh. And I had never read it. And the other night I sat down and I read it in one gulp without moving from the couch for 2 hours. I'm not sure that I breathed or moved. you know, it's absolutely one of the most extraordinary things I've ever read. And so I just want to know more about how you are putting together your vision now, if that makes sense.
Y'all, and I'm from North Carolina, and when I start saying y'all, this story, Gilgamesh, I mean, what if? One of my specialties, one of my degree profiles is antiquity. So I stare at the world through ancient myths, through the oldest stories we have, through a global frame. So in looking at Gilgamesh, it's the first story we have. It was carved in cuneiform, which was an untranslatable hieroglyphic language that had to be cobbled together by other forgotten languages. And it's the story of this guy named Gilgamesh who, he thinks he's it. Well, he ain't it. And to show him that he ain't it, the gods go, we're going to send you. We're going to send you, and you're going to stand right with yourself. And then we're just going to watch. And then they make some poor choices. And then they have to travel to do what guys do, to go make war on somebody that didn't make war on them. And then it really goes south. They make war and they kill this innocent creature. And then the guy that the gods sent gets sick and dies. Gilgamesh's only friend. And then Gilgamesh goes on the great journey. What is death? What is life? What is important? Who am I? What is my value? What is my worth? And this is probably 6,000 years old, this story. And on top of that, he gets what he wants which is he meets the oldest man in the world. And then he says, why is there death? And the guy goes, because that's how we roll. Everybody dies. You're gonna die. And then Gilgamesh goes, well, what's up? And the guy said, just go back, be a better person, be a better king, don't be a jerk, and love your people. You're not all that. And doesn't he sound like us? My God. So Vicki, how do I get to the places I go? Because we're all walking the same walk. Who is himself is his ego. It's everything he's afraid of and everything he loves and everything he doubts. Gilgamesh is us. He was just really tall. He was a demigod. He was just really tall. He was like Saul. Saul was really tall too. I mean, we have these really tall people. So how do I get where I'm going? Because everybody has been going there for thousands of years. You want to know what's going on? Read the Kabbalah. You want to know what's going on? Read Rumi. You want to know what's going on? Read the Oresteia. Every Greek myth, every Roman myth. We are a repetition until we choose not to of all the great errors in self-knowledge that human beings have to walk through before they can find peace. How do I get to where I go? Because we've been walking there for thousands of years. And I'm not alone. Jesus talks about it, Muhammad talks about it, Rumi talks about it, Gandhi talks about it, MLK talks about it. Oh my Lord, I was watching, I mean, every television, it's all this, Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, the she-ro's journey, the they-ro's journey. How do I get to where I'm going? Because we're all going. I've just decided to run. I've just decided to run towards it.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I've just decided, I have these questions that I ask my students. And one of the big questions is, after this year, what can we take with us into the next year? And what can we, with gratitude, finally leave behind? What if? I always say when I teach acting, it's not the choice the actors make, it's the ability to make a choice. The ability to make a choice. And you can learn that, but it's also the choice to make a choice. So, if it's a choice to finally leave some things behind, I choose to leave my fear behind. I tell my colleagues all the time, you really want to have this meeting with me because I have no filters left and I have no fear. No fear and no filters for this moment. Now I'll be terrified after we get off this Zoom and I'll go, what did I say? Did that help?
Yes. What are some of the other questions that you ask your students?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, Vicki invited me to speak about this course. My big what if was, because I'm a playwright and an actor and we operate on what if. What if I could build a course for a first-year seminar for an 18-year-old that would offer them a space to be able to clearly discover and articulate what they believe, the rules they follow, the actions they take to show the rules that show what they believe, And on their best day and on their worst day, what was the one thing they knew that could not be shaken? What if? And so 5 years ago, I applied for a fellowship and got a fellowship to build this course, and it's called the Moral Moments Project. And it's on 6 campuses now. We have 24 campuses at Penn State, and thousands of students take it. We have 40 instructors teaching it now. And what it is, it's a 15-week course for an 18-year-old that actually offers them the opportunity to tell you what they believe, to tell you what the regulations are in their world, to tell you how they see themselves moving in the world, and to tell you what they have faith in. It's based on morals, ethics, actions, and faith. So that question was born from, I started as a teacher working with 13-year-olds. And actually, Vicki, you were there for part of that. Mm-hmm. I brought Vicki in the, was it the 80s or the early 90s?
I don't know, but her hair was like that. So.
I mean, our hair was really, her hair stuck up. Mine was really dark.
Yeah.
My question for these students was, fill in the blank. It began with fill in the blank. I am, I know, I want, I believe, I dream. And by asking those questions to a 13-year-old, Vicki got to ask those questions to 16-year-olds, 14, 15, and 16-year-olds in a high school situation. To watch them unpack that, I am begins with, I am bored with you. You know, I am, I am not having a good time in summer school. I am, you know, and by the time you've given them space to paint that, to dance that, and Vicki helped them sing that, you get to, I am resilient. I am beautiful. I am strong. I am loving. You know, by the time you walk a young person through those kinds of opportunities, you see lives getting changed. So the questions I ask actually are based on teaching young people how to ask a question. We've become so in education and in higher ed or in K through 12, the capacity to form questions is at some of its lowest accessibility. I meet kids that can tell me a whole lot of things, but they don't know how to ask me a question. And so when that young man asked me what my experience in 9/11 was, he was exercising something unusual. He asked me a question. The young people listen to me, the young people today know how to tell you who they are, but they don't know how to ask you who you are. And that kind of disconnect is my entry point. So the questions that I ask them are, ask me a question. And, you know, I roll them back into very small who, what, when, where, why. I say, you have to earn why. They go, why is there racism? And I go, huh, I hear you. I hear you. Talk to me about the who. Who is racist in your world? Where do you see that happening? What does it look like? When did you see it? How is it playing out in your world? And once you open up that floodgate of storytelling with a young person or an older person or anybody, it became my life's work at Penn State to help people tell their own story. And I had this project that Vicki talked about, Cultural Conversations. Our core methodology was called body language. And I would go into student populations, I'd go into community populations, and I would help people tell one story about themselves, that if they could tell that story, I would know who they were. And I'd help people tell that story in 1 minute. And then I'd take about 40 or 50 of those stories and put them on a stage. And then audiences would listen to an hour of people telling stories about race, gender, sexual orientation, gun control, violence against women, global poverty, whatever we chose to talk about. And you talk about real change. And we worked with the community. I worked with police officers, and the mayor would love to show up at these events because the mayor would just go, I think we need to talk about this. So
And
go ahead.
And what do you think the power of story is? Why is that so powerful?
Because it's personal. It's easy. You know, Brene Brown says it's hard to hate somebody up close. It's hard to dislike someone you know. And when a person tells you a story, you take a step towards them. When a person lets you know who they are, the distance between difference is less and less. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's the same, because we know we're not. But the distance between what is the same about us, which is our experiences in the world, they're different, but all of us are having experiences of the world. So the power of story, Gilgamesh is a story. My God, you read the whole thing. Gilgamesh, yeah.
It changed me. I felt it changed me at some very profound level, as the greatest works of art do, you know. I sat there on the couch and I just couldn't move when I was done, you know. And I felt as if I was hearing my story and everybody's story, the eternal story. Well, that's the hero's journey, you know, but still the power of that, the hero's journey, never ceases to amaze me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it gave me courage.
Oh,
you know, and I hope, knock on wood, and I hope that it, I mean, we'll see, but I hope that it gave me another level of, how do I want to say this? Humility, maybe,
oh,
of understanding that the important thing, as you said earlier, is coming home to, because the hero always comes home and they're changed at the end, you know, coming home. And I love the ending of it, where Gilgamesh the ending is just him describing the city. And here are the gates, and here's the terrace, and here's the woman stomping on the grapes, or, you know, whatever. And what a magnificent thing. And I kept thinking about that in terms of the Boulder community, and I don't know, all these things went through my mind about the violence and everything. And I thought, and yet here still is our community, you know. Here is our Chorale, here is our city, here is our here are our mountains. You know, it is still our city, even though we have been through, you know, something terrible. And so I think it resonated for me on many levels, and it will stick with me always. I'm going to read it again this week. I mean, I think it'll be a story that I'll read multiple times, you know.
Yeah, and you'll always get something else after. And the beauty of that is that, like Boulder, there was a day before the catastrophe. And that's how Gilgamesh starts, with the walls. and he does the whole journey, and he comes back to the very place that he started.
Yes.
And you are quite correct when you talk about the hero journey, because the hero is all, whether it's Odysseus or Achilles. Well, Achilles, it's a different story. Always trying to go home. And when you imagine that the chorale is music is always home. Before we speak, we sing. Before we walk, we dance. That's just the way human, I mean, Aristotle said that, for God's sake. We are mimetic creatures, and the sounds of nature are the sounds we make before we learn words. So the beauty of music, you know, that always brings people home. That's why you cry when you hear music, because it's home. It's home.
It is.